My name is Zachary Conan, and if you enjoy my thoughts, make sure to subscribe to my channel. The name's Plissken, Craig. Craig, this movie is really cool, man. This is a really cool movie. We're talking about Escape from New York today, 1981, directed by John Carpenter, one of his most beloved movies. And it's not that controversial to say it's probably my favorite one, though I'm not entirely sure if I could give you absolutely great reasons for that. Of course, Carpenter's known for another film with Kurt Russell you might have heard of called Big Trouble in Little China, as well as Halloween, Assault on Precinct 13, The Fog. He's an incredibly well-known genre cult filmmaker, really. This isn't an art house director we're talking about, and that really isn't saying anything against his style or his abilities. It's just that he's far more interested in telling genre-centric cult films. And Escape from New York is really fun. Really fun, and one of, probably, I would argue, one of the most influential action movies ever made. As well, dips into comic books, heavily into video games, into other films as well. What'd you think? What'd you think, Craig?
I can't say that I love the film, but I can definitely see its influence on things that I do love, so I guess for that I do owe the movie a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just to jump into some of the influences of that Escape from New York, we definitely wouldn't have, most certainly wouldn't have Metal Gear Solid as we know it. Most certainly wouldn't have even just basic concepts, like Arkham City is a video game. That entire concept is Escape from New York, where they make Gotham City into a prison with walls, like that is run and by the prisoners and this the worlds that they create. And if the gladiator match doesn't evoke the Penguin level from that game, I don't know what will. And of course, a lot of different movies, things like that. And Snake Plissken is one of my heroes, man. I love this guy. I love his weird little deliveries or one-liners, his breathy dialogue. President of what? Fuck your war, fuck your president. Like, it's just a marvelous little genre film. I did really like the atmosphere, though. If we are talking, it's a goofball kind of movie. It's really dark, though. It is a dark dystopian movie. It is campy, but it's also pretty dark. And I love the atmosphere. I even like the miniatures that were used. I thought that they were really fun and added a lot to the overall feeling and attitude of the film. The attitude is really... What do you think about the attitude? Would you call it, like, cynical or, like, nihilistic, or just, like... Because it was really bleak. It was a really bleak attitude about everything.
I don't know. If this movie was made nowadays, it would be borderline parody. But I don't know if you can really call this movie a parody because it was made so early.
Oh, no, definitely not a parody. You could maybe argue that Escape from Los Angeles 15 years later is a parody, because it's, like, very bad, and they incorporate... It's basically a remake that's just set in New York with, same director, same actor, but the style and attitude didn't age well, like, as you're saying. Like, by that point, that kind of... Because we brought up Metal Gear Solid, and one of the reasons why that game is so good for me is its general attitude of it's somehow both self-aware and deathly serious at the same exact time. And Escape from New York is also incredibly self-aware and deathly serious. Like, no, we need to get the president out of here. Or like, no, these are like grimy, gross, like bad, there's danger here. But at the same time, there's this huge, overwhelming self-awareness about it, that it is kind of a extreme kind of film. It's like an extreme kind of version of a cult film, even.
It's almost like that one kid from high school that wears a shitload of leather, but like he's well aware that he wears a shitload of leather, so it kind of makes him cool.
Yeah.
He just owns it.
Yeah, I was telling you, like, I love this movie to death. Can't exactly give you a good reason why, and to be perfectly honest, I've never read or seen perfect justification for this movie, but it is one of the most loved movies ever. It's just probably got to be just a perfect storm kind of idea. A great time for it to come out. A director at the peak of his game, and Kurt Russell becoming the action star that we know and love. And also, you have like Hollywood royalty in this movie for some reason. Not just Donald Pleasance, but Lee Van Cleef as Hawk was awesome. I love seeing Lee Van Cleef, but even more so Ernest Borgnine as Cabby. I mean, he is the image of 50s happiness. Like from Marty, which we have covered on this channel, and The Wild Bunch, covered both of those actually. But Ernest Borgnine in this movie, I don't know how John Carpenter got these incredibly powerful like icons of old Hollywood or of 50s Hollywood and 60s Hollywood to be in this film, almost in. I'm not going to say deconstructed because that lends too much of a philosophical lens to the film, but they're certainly like the inverse of what they normally play, and and the movie's attitude is just so sardonic and so full of like gallows humor. It's like a morbidly humorous film as well.
Yeah, and I was gonna add earlier, I can't think of what kind of like adjective to throw onto this movie, but whatever that adjective is, it like I said, it owns it, and that's kind of what makes it what it is. Because like, if this movie took itself way too seriously, it would be bad.
Exactly, but it's like we're saying, it also has that self-awareness that like it knows what it is, and it, like you're saying, it owns it. It completely becomes it. But at the same time, like it is going to tell you the stakes are real. The stakes are high. The stakes are real. The president is being abused. Like these things are real, but it's told through the lens of like hyper stylized mania, which is really exciting. It's a really exciting movie with a lot of really great scenes. One of my favorite scenes is like so mysterious to me and feels really film noir-y and out of nowhere. It has to do with Susan Hubley is the actor's name. She's her character's name is literally the girl in like the chock of coffee, chock full of nuts house, right?
Chock full of nuts.
Yeah, and Snake ends up in there because there's about to be some fucking Holocaust occurring on the streets, but he ends up in there, and they have this really cool. It is a super film noir-y exchange of dialogue where she's the first person he actually talks to in there, has a real conversation with, and that's the first time you hear someone go like, "I thought you were dead," because apparently everybody thought that Snake Plissken was dead, and you get some great back and forths, and it does subvert expectations because you're like, okay, so here's the first friend, and she's a woman, and she's obviously into him. She dies at the end of that scene pretty immediately.
Yeah.
It's a good subversion of expectations. In fact, I love that Snake Plissken remains this lone wolf throughout the whole film, even with Adrienne Barbeau, who top 10 cleavages in all of 80s cinema in this film as Maggie. And that's just an honest truth. There's no sexual tension between them even. Like Snake Plissken, it did subvert expectations in a lot of different ways. He wasn't about getting a girl. He wasn't even about a loyalty to the president.
He was just like, this situation sucks and I don't want to die.
Yeah, exactly. But you see a morality at the end of the movie. You see, the reason why I even showed this movie to Craig, besides the fact that like I shamelessly love every second of it, is that he asked for like a movie that I would consider kind of like American mythos in a way, like slightly American mythology, but like with the caveat like don't choose a Western. But so I went and I chose this film specifically for the character of Snake Plissken, and you see like the archetype of Snake Plissken in Westerns and in a lot of different American tales, because the idea of Snake Plissken is incredibly and essentially American, and the idea that we all view ourselves as rebels, as lone wolves, as loners, as out on our own in a world that doesn't understand us and doesn't understand justice, but we're trying to like, we're that like one decent person in a fundamentally indecent time. That's how we like Americans always view themselves. Like we always like we're part of a collective known as the United States, but we always view ourselves as fiercely individualist. And but you know what I'm saying, just loners out there, and it's more about fighting for justice rather than your president, because Snake Plissken seems apolitical throughout the entire film, but he ends it with one of my favorite action hero endings of all time, kind of testing the president, asking him like, a lot of people died getting you out, what do you think? and Donald Pleasance is too busy admiring his own gaze in a very narcissistic manner. So Snake
Yeah,
allows the cabbie's tape to be played with his silly music, and then the last thing you see is Snake walking away, destroying like the tape that would bring like peace to like the nuclear arms race or something, and just like throwing it like. To me, that is justice. That is that is the only justified thing in that entire film that's about a prison system. Like, and I really dug that. What did you think of Snake Plissken as like an archetype?
Um. Well, I don't know. It's it's almost like a new one to me. Outside of like really bad action movies, because I feel like only really bad action movies have pulled off a similar character that I can think of.
Well, I mean, they're aping like the westerns, though. I mean, you could apply this to like Charles Bronson in with the harmonica in Once Upon a Time in the West, or more easily to the Man with No Name, every Clint Eastwood character. Uh, Dirty Harry, even probably every character Clint Eastwood ever played, actually. But well, bad action movies try to do the archetype, and because it's instantly relatable, and they know that it's an archetype of American masculinity, and it works on like primal levels. I can even Die Hard is a great action movie, but Die Hard is also the lone wolf.
I can think of a good example. Rambo.
Yeah, exactly.
Rambo was a great example.
I would like you to think of an example that doesn't have the Snake Plissken archetype, actually, because I believe that that's basically in every single action movie.
Well, the thing is that the reason I relate it to Rambo is because with Rambo, like, the only thing at stake in the movie is himself. Or at least the one that I saw. I believe was the first one. That's the one where he comes back from war and like sets up guerrilla warfare in the fucking woods or whatever.
Brian Dennehy's like a dick for like no reason whatsoever.
But I guess a lot of the action movies that I can think of, that there's always either they're working for some kind of government agency or they have a person to protect. But like in this movie, it's literally just I either do this or I die.
Yeah. But I mean, I would argue this archetype is probably in every successful action movie, like Rambo, like Terminator 2. Sarah Connor is definitely an outsider, and so is Edward Furlong. He's set up to be. So I think every successful action movie has to have the archetype of the loner in order to be successful, or else it just doesn't work at all.
Yeah, I guess so, because like other things that come to mind when you say successful action, the first thing that comes to mind is 007, because I adore 007.
He's a perpetual loner.
He is a loner, but I guess I wasn't thinking of it just on the idea of someone who works alone, and then just the story always. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. If I think about it on someone who works alone, and no matter even if they try not to, they end up alone, then yeah. I guess that is pretty common amongst.
What do you think that says about like the American character? That I mean, it's true. We all respond to it, even like subconsciously or cognizantly. Like, what do you think it is for the like to see a loner on screen that makes you want to be that person without any connections? Like, what part of escapism does that? What hole does that form of escapism fill? Do you think? Like, we all just don't want to have attachments. We all want to be...
I mean, as a whole, Americans are very much like... Our mentality is very micro as opposed to macro. We do tend to think about family and home as opposed to land and country.
Yeah.
So, I guess that would just resonate... in general, because even as a nation, one of our things was not... Because a lot of people say freedom, but the idea of freedom was separation from something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly.
Which is essentially, if you narrow that down to a single person, that's essentially what you're getting out of these lone wolf characters is, a common trope in a lot of these action movies that we're bringing up is even if they do work for someone, at some point within the series or within the individual movies, they're going to retaliate and just do their own thing, and then it turns out fine anyways for them.
Well, yeah,
because
you hit it on the nose that as a country, like our principles, we are banded together by very subjective concepts. There's no actual definition of freedom, no actual definition of justice. There are subjective interpretations of them. And so we love seeing someone like Snake Plissken's interpretation of justice, because I think we all feel like we have our own, and that proper justice is never being meted out on anybody, and that's why we fucking cheer when he saves the president's life and then ruins his career in the same instance. Like, there's something incredibly justified about that, and I think it speaks to the American culture's subjective understanding of our own identity. Because we are banded together under these things that have no actual definitions, but they mean a lot to us. And I think on the inside, we probably feel like everyone's just abandoned those concepts, even though no one fully agreed on what they fundamentally represented in the first place. So I think that's part of what the loner means. Figuring out what the loner means in a Western is far more easy to figure out, because that's all about the expansion of industry and how that was killing individual freedom and autonomy. Like, that's easy to figure out there, but it's interesting when a loner is placed into a dystopian science fiction film, and you have to figure out what is it saying there, because that's like post the industrial age, that's post science fiction, and then Escape from New York is one of those films that is set in the future, and it's in a dystopian future, and you can't mirror the archetype of Snake along with the expansion of industry or anything like that. It is something, I think, a lot more subjective and maybe accidentally philosophical than your typical Western hero. Because the Western hero is firmly fixed in having to be anti-industry and anti-expansion of technology, because that's what killed the West, and that's what killed the outlaw and the loner. And Escape from New York is positing a universe where Snake Plissken's the coolest fucking dude in the world. That's what it's positing. I love this movie. Was there any part that stood out for you?
At first I thought I was gonna love the Duke character, but it ended up falling a little bit flat for me. It wasn't as interesting as I thought. He was a little more, how do I put it? I think the word I'm looking for is divisive.
Yeah.
Like, he was simply just there to push
the plot. He was an antagonist, actually, with not a whole lot of desirable characteristics to him.
Yeah. Because at first when I saw him, I was like, this dude looks pretty fucking cool. And then it's like, not much.
In all fairness, I mean, Isaac Hayes is a bad motherfucker, and he is like cool, but not nearly as cool as Snake Plissken. And even like Snake Plissken, like, think about it in your head, like, how many people did he save? How many people did he actually kill? Like, how many things did he actually pull off successfully in this movie outside of the actual mission of saving the president? Like, everyone he came in contact with was murdered in front of him. Some of them, like the cabbie, because of his own mistakes. And, I mean, he gets injured before, like, an amazing gladiator match, but, like, your hero is, like, maimed and, like, punched around a lot more than he actually does the punching. Like, for someone who is so cool, when you think back on it, like, he's just doing all these awesome things, when you actually watch it, he's in a very visceral amount of danger all the time, and he never has the upper hand, really.
No. Like, there's a lot of scenes where you think he's just going to go completely badass, and he just runs away.
No, exactly. Which I think is fascinating.
But they pulled it off in a way where you don't, like, think he's
like
a bitch for doing so. It's just like, okay, well, he's just being smart.
That's almost a perfect example of, like, being both self-aware and deathly serious that we're talking about. You got a dude walking around with a fucking eye patch who, like, calls himself Snake. Like, and, like, just wears, like, camo and, like, tank tops and shit and looks like a fucking, like, I don't even know, the most beautiful man alive. But that's an absurd concept. But then you mirror that with, like, oh no, but we're also going to be serious. he can die. Like, he is not invincible. He needs to not only run away, but limp away for the last, like, fucking 45 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And, oh my god, this movie is, like, fantastic. I just love it.
And even at the end, like, he was saved. That was the last thing that happened.
Yeah. The president got to have the last bullets, like, shot. Like, the president got to kill the Duke.
Yep.
Snake didn't get to. He got to watch all of his compadres, his compatriots get killed on the way there.
And then because he was on such a strict time limit, he didn't even take the time to kill the Duke. Because, to be fair, he wasn't even there to kill the Duke. He was... It was literally just a fucking mission movie. Like, do the mission, get out. Like, that's all that really
I would
matters.
even argue that Snake Plissken didn't want the Duke to die there.
Yeah,
If he could get out without killing the Duke, that's one less person. That's just a little less blood on his hands, as far as he's concerned. It was an unnecessary death for him. That's what I would argue, at least, especially since Kurt Russell did bring some intensity to this performance, because when he's getting the explosives or neutralized in his neck, or the capsules or whatever, like you said, and like we saw, the tears in his eyes, or like the intensity in his eyes of like, get this, fucking stop this now, stop this. He did bring a good amount of emotionality to the role. I mean, it's a legendary performance and character, so most certainly. Do you have any final thoughts on Escape from New York? Do you see why it's so influential? Like, do you see what people saw in it, like, stylistically and attitude-wise?
I can see where the influence was used. I couldn't see anything that, like, I could pull out of it, I guess.
Well, I wasn't asking that. I was asking, do you just see... Do you understand why it's a cult movie? Do you think it deserves its cult status?
I guess I can understand why it's a cult movie.
That was the question.
Yeah, but I didn't personally love it, so it's really hard for me to say.
Craig takes dum-dum pills.
That's true.
No, actually, I met a lot of people who don't like Escape from New York. Because it is a strange movie that seems to be promising you something absurd. And it's not like it breaks that promise, but like it goes through with it in the way that you didn't think that it would. Like it promises you like an absurd action movie that's going to be pretty campy and shit. And what it tries to do is deliver like morbid humor. I think it does it successfully. Like morbid humor, a really unique atmosphere, but also a lot of like tragedy that just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like a victory at the end of the movie as well. This isn't Big Trouble in Little China. That's definitely a movie that that promises you insanity and delivers and delivers and delivers and delivers. But I kind of like the
subtlety.
There's something even to me a little experimental about Escape from New York, like playing with tones, playing with atmospheres that like maybe you wouldn't think go together, and maybe they really don't, and that's why it's difficult to duplicate this film in any kind of media. I think John Carpenter did insanely well. Yeah, I do love this movie.
Yeah, it was just, I never felt drawn in, I guess. Like, I could care less what was happening to the characters on screen. I can't say that I wasn't curious as to what was going to happen next. But, yeah, I just didn't have any attachment to the film, and I think that was the main problem.
I don't know how you had an attachment to Rambo.
I never said I did.
You said you liked First Blood.
I said it was a good movie.
And this isn't?
This is a fine movie, but like I'm neutral.
How is Rambo even better?
Because it's funner to watch.
Craig is attacking Snake Plissken, and he's getting defensive over here because I'm challenging. No, I actually think your criticisms are fine and valid. Like at the beginning, I was like, I probably can't give good justification for just why this is good. But at the same time, like neither can Red Letter Media or like anybody else I've seen like in-depth videos about. They get to a point where they just like they become self-aware and they're like, you know what, fuck it, I just love it. I don't know what to say because they try to do what I just did, which is like give you this pseudo-philosophical lens to look through it. But when at the end of the day, it's just fucking rad, in my opinion. That's all it is, really.
No, and it's because I feel like films like this, it's just really weird. Because, like I said, if it was made nowadays, I would assume it was a parody. But I understand that it's not, so I can't even look at it as a parody and enjoy it ironically, or enjoy it for its irony, I should say. So it's a matter of like I don't dislike the movie, but I can't find a reason to actually like the movie. So it's like I'm on a complete neutral plane for it.
I'll allow that. I'll allow that. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. It's just like I can't point out anything that I loved. I guess. Like I said, I love the things that it influenced, so I have a lot to thank the movie for. But yeah.
I named my wiener after Kurt Russell.
You did say that during the movie.
This is a true story. So this movie means a lot to me.
I guess it does.
Every bad word you say against this movie, you're speaking against my wiener right now.
It's really close to home.
Everything you're saying, you're like, I can see like why it's influenced people, but I just don't like your wiener, Zach, is what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah.
That's just fair.
So that also implies that anything positive you say about this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So, leave your comments below and maybe a link to your Instagram. You never know.
Oh my god. This conversation went up and down. Just like I'm not gonna finish the joke.
No, I don't want to know.
Oh, that was a fun time. Thank you for watching the video. My name is Zachary Conan, but you can call me Snake. And this is Craig.
And that's Kurt Russell. Wait, you should put that away.